Step back, puts up the three, got hit, shot's good, and one! James Harden double team, and a chance for a 4-point play.
Okay, welcome back to the DC pod. I'm Christian. Alongside me, as always, Dallas diehard Darcy, where we cover all things basketball. Now, look, I'm hopeful this is the last time we'll probably speak about the Mavs this season, considering they're all in Cancun at the moment, Das, and maybe you are as well. But in all seriousness, so Game 7 of that first round between Mavs and Clips took place between when we did our last pod and now, so we haven't had a chance to speak about it. What did you sort of make of that game in particular?
Just like Game 6, a golden opportunity missed. You know, there was plenty of chances to win that game. Luka kind of carried us offensively, kept us right in it the whole way. A lot of our players just weren't up to the moment, had some good looks at shots, weren't able to knock down. That's just how it goes. You know, I felt like it was always going to be a very tough game for us to win because we had multiple chances to close out the Clippers. You know, when you're up 2-0 coming home, you just got to win one. And then when you split them and then you end up Game 5 at home, you just got to win that one and then you got 2 chances to close out. And when you miss that many chances to close it out, you know, and it comes down to Game 7, it felt like the momentum was always going their way. And credit to the Clippers, they completely shut us out with elite 3-point shooting. So, you know, we lost that series, fair enough, because we couldn't close it out, not for any other reason. So, you know, that's kind of a anticlimax to a nice bit of momentum at the end of the season. But, you know, you can't be too unhappy about it. We got beaten by who I thought was a better team this year.
And so now going into sort of the off season, if we sort of project and look ahead, now that you've sort of had a week, I guess, to you know, accept the defeat and the series and the outcome, have you thought about potentially what you'd like to see the Mavs do in the off season, be it signings or be it you know, transactions or trades you can make coming into next year?
Well, I think you've got to look at first what the moves that we did make and whether they were successful or not. And when you look back at the Richardson versus Seth Curry trade, you know, you got to think of it as a loss. You know, Curry looks great. We would have loved to have Curry in this series. I think it would have been huge for the Mavericks. Potentially would have got us over the line. Yeah, so got to take our L on that one for sure, and credit to Philly for taking us down. And also when you look at the other additions we made, you know, in particular the JJ Redick one was kind of a last minute gasp, and we weren't able to get anything out of him, which is a little bit disappointing, you know, because I really like him and I think he would have been very helpful in the series as well. But you know, he's a free agent now, so it looks like there's a chance he might not ever play for Dallas again. So that's a bit disappointing. But other than that, you know, we didn't overplay our hand in terms of trading and moving anything around. And the foundation is still there with Luka and a couple of other nice young players like Finney Smith and Kleber. I think even though he struggled in the playoffs, made some good leaps. And we both love Brunson. So I think we've got a pretty good core. But, you know, a lot of it kind of hinges on what can we get out of Porzingis, and it's a huge off season for him. You know, there's not really any flexibility for us. We've bought into Porzingis, and we need to, you know, hope to see some serious improvements in the off season and see him put in some real work. I know that Luka is not taking an off season. He's going to help Slovenia hopefully make it into the Olympics. So it'll be interesting to see him. I hope he doesn't get injured. Fingers crossed, touch wood. But yeah, that'll be really good for his development as well. You know, he'll just continue to get better, which is great stuff for Dallas.
And so the kind of point there, I guess, another one is with Hardaway Jr., his free agent, right? His deal's gone. So you'd expect in the best interest of the Mavs anyway, it would make sense to re-sign him. And even if it doesn't work out and potentially regresses or it doesn't fit the team moving forward, that you could probably deal him, right? It wouldn't make sense to just let him walk, would it? Because, I mean, what are you going to replace him with if he does walk?
I don't think so. Exactly right. And he's a guy who's a part of the fabric and a part of the, you know, a part of the character and the build of this team. You know, he really gets along well with Luka. Obviously, he's found a niche with Coach Carlisle. You know, there's a trust factor there, a big trust factor there. And the way he's played this season, you know, you can't, you know, you're not going to be able to find, for the money that we're looking to pay him, you're not going to be able to find someone who's much better at shooting the ball and being a microwave, playing hard on defense. And, you know, the way that he fits around what we're doing and the way that he fits in the NBA right now, he's value for money. And I feel like we're going to get it. And he's still at a good age. He's had a strong injury history. I'm happy and keen to get him back next season for sure. He definitely wasn't the problem for me. He really improved this year.
He was a part of the KP trade, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So is it fair to say, looking back at that now, we can call it the Hardaway Jr. trade and not the Porzingis trade, because he was potentially the best player to come from that deal?
He was definitely a steal for sure, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you can say that. You take the best season Hardaway's ever had and you put it up against Porzingis' best season. KP was a beast. Before he did get injured in New York, he was an absolute beast. So I'm still holding out hope for Porzingis. There are concerning signs, and you really kind of question what's going on in his head and how he's approaching the game. But without being too impatient, we really want to see some changes and some development in the off season, because if he comes out looking similar to what he looked this season at the start of next year, come up to the trade deadline, then we're going to have some serious questions about whether he does fit long term with this group.
Yeah, that's fair. And I don't know the likelihood of a deal like this being able to go down, but I did see it a lot just through different, whether it be Bleacher Report or a few other sites, sort of one team's problem for another team's potential problem. What would you think of just a straight KP for Kemba Walker trade? Would you like that, hate that? What's your initial feelings? Because the salary works. The salary works, just to confirm that. But it's just a matter of if you want to trade a 7-foot big man that can at his best obviously protect the rim, space the floor, for a point guard that at his best is an all-star point guard. So it's really the balance of what potentially is better suited for your team. But I suppose how would you feel about that deal? Would you even want that?
I think I would like Kemba Walker with the current mix. If you could add him to the mix of Porzingis and Luka Doncic, then I think we've got something really special. I liked that noise that I was hearing before he ended up in Boston, how he could have potentially been a part of the Mavericks. That would have been great. But Kemba, he's copping a lot of crap because he's not performing up to the value of his contract, which right now it looks ridiculous. He's getting paid over $35 million, and he's going through probably the most difficult injury period of his career, and he's producing at an up and down kind of level. And he's also next to a couple of excellent superstar players in Boston. But Kemba Walker, I think he's still got some value, and I still really like his game, and he can definitely score offensively. So even though his worth is probably not tied to what he's getting paid right now, I still think he's a really nice piece and a good player. And for me, in terms of getting value back for how much getting paid per season, I think him and Porzingis are about the same, really underperforming in terms of how much they're getting paid, because, guys get paid a lot in the NBA nowadays, like $30 million. There's a lot of guys who are at that kind of level, but to be producing and really getting value for that money, and even in playoff situations, it's really tough to do. And those two players just haven't been able to do it just yet.
And Kemba himself, I think when he's actually been on the floor, he's actually been quite productive this season anyway. I thought he had a pretty decent year, but I guess the issue that sort of has come of light really over the last 12 months has been his ability to stay on the floor. So again, in this series against Brooklyn, I think he didn't play 3, 4, and 5. I think he played the first 2 games, but he didn't play the last 3. So I think pretty concerning, because when he's on the floor, he seemed to be good anyway this year. So it's just a matter of trying to fix that, because it's always worrying with knees, always.
For sure. And you hate to see it for a small player like that. But you could say similar things about Porzingis, about how tall he is and how big guys don't tend to have that longer careers when you start going 7'1", 7'2", plus that kind of height. How much up and down wear and tear can they really take?
Yeah. Okay, so the playoffs now, the current teams that are still in it, makes sense to just jump straight into the most entertaining series, and that's Milwaukee, Brooklyn. Despite potentially being let down and a bit disappointed by what we saw in the first 2 games, and sort of our expectations being that this was going to be effectively the finals in the second round, how do you sum up the first 3 games really, and what do you kind of make of the series in general? Has it changed your thinking about potentially who can win, or have you sort of stayed the course with your original prediction?
I think I stayed the course. I think, it was really kind of perplexing in that second game, how although they were beaten, by a dozen, I think, in the first game, Milwaukee, they really didn't make a lot of changes and respond in game 2. They really kind of fell off a cliff a little bit in that game and got blown out. And part of that was some some all-time offense and shooting. That was some of the best basketball I've seen the whole season. What Brooklyn did in game 2, the way that they, shared the ball in transition and really took every opportunity to nail an open shot or hit a big contested one-on-one play. They really made all the crucial plays and all the momentum plays in that game to figuratively they just destroy Milwaukee in that game. It was almost like, how could they come back from being so dismantled? But it really is only one game. And you saw that when, as soon as the tip went in game 3, you could tell, all right, like we're in a series right now. If Milwaukee win this game, then all of a sudden it's 2-1 and it doesn't matter how badly they lost game 2. This is a whole nother, fairy tale and how long this series could go. I still think we're a decent chance of going to 7 games, because we're talking about 2 teams that are absolutely elite and they've got deep talent. I think the third game in particular was a real back and forth. There was some crazy momentum shifts. And I want to know, Chris, what were you thinking when Milwaukee got out to that outstanding lead? I think it was 23-7 or something in the first quarter, and that was all Giannis and Middleton scoring almost their whole first 30 points. What were you thinking at that stage of the game?
Yeah, blowout. Look towards game 4. Because KD himself wasn't shooting the ball great. I think he started out 2 of 10 or something like that. He was really slow getting going. It was mainly Kyrie, to be honest, and especially in that first quarter. But the juice in the end, that's actually what hurt him in the final play, which we'll get to. But he helped bring him back in the game and reduce the deficit was Bruce Brown, right? And his play. So just again, I don't really know what Brook Lopez was doing for a lot of those defensive possessions where he decided that he was pretty comfortable with letting Bruce Brown take uncontested floaters and layups. So once that adjustment was sort of made, it did start to affect Brown a little bit. But initial reaction was this could be bad. This could be a blowout because the one thing, although, I wouldn't say Milwaukee shot the ball awesome. It was really just a lot of Middleton and Giannis, as you said. The thing I did like was the defense. Brooklyn were missing a lot of makeable shots, but I did like the defensive intensity that they were sort of showing, which was, to be honest, pretty non-existent in game 1 and 2. I know, as you just mentioned, Brooklyn, obviously, if they're going to shoot the ball that well, then what can you do? But there's just dumb things that I didn't like in those first 2 games in particular. Budenholzer went to a zone quite a few times. And while that worked really well against Miami, Brooklyn are a whole nother level when it comes to shooting the ball. They're no Miami. So they did get quite exposed in that. And sort of to carry off the back of what you were saying with game 2, I think like most people, they're expecting a response, right? After game 1. And then to lose by 40, that's when I think most people were thinking, well, shit, if you expect Brooklyn to come out hard and that's sort of the performance you get out of those guys. And in particular, I was looking at Middleton. I think most people were looking at Middleton. Like, come on, dude, you've got to shoot like so much better than this. It was really important game 3 for him in particular. I think, I don't know what he shot in game 1 and game 2. Was it 25% in each? I don't have the exact numbers, but it was bad.
Sub 30.
Sub 30. So I think most people were questioning his viability as being, a number 2 guy. If there weren't already question marks about how he could hold up in a playoff series, that certainly added more questions and more fuel to the fire of if Middleton can be that second option. But he was awesome. I think he scored double digits in the first quarter alone or something like that. So he got out to a firing start. And the 90s type style that we saw in game 3 was just so unexpected. Every possession seemed to really matter because every time a shot went in, you were surprised. Whereas more often than not, these days with how basketball is being played and the shooting on the court at any given time, you're surprised when it doesn't go in. But game 3 was a total throwback. How did you enjoy that type of game? I know a lot of people now are used to the 140s, 130s and the running and gunning and plenty of jumpers being taken and made and guys having 40 points and 50 points, but this was just a slog dust. So did you enjoy that as just a fan?
I think you're exactly right with that kind of summation there for sure. It's crazy. I felt the same way, like expecting shots to expecting shots to miss the way it was going down the stretch. That fourth quarter was an absolute dogfight. Like neither team could get a bucket for almost the first 5 minutes of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
But I felt it from the beginning because all the hype around, there was a lot of emotional energy coming into that game 3, given the way that game 2 finished. And the start was absolutely critical for the way the whole game played out, I thought. And in particular, like you touched on how, how KD missed his first few shots and didn't necessarily, be super assertive and assert his dominance over the matchup with PJ Tucker early. But Nets got about 3 or 4 wide open looks in the first 2 minutes. Like Kyrie had a look at a 3, Joe Harris had a wide open look. And I think it was a hard take to the basket by Joe Harris that missed, rolled around the rim. Brucey tried to tip dunk it, rolled around and popped out. I think they missed their first 7 shots. So that kind of took the sting out straight away of, this Brooklyn team is too good at shooting. They're too good offensively. They're going to beat us no matter what. They're going to score 120 no matter what. As soon as that opening stretch of no scoring, it seemed to become Milwaukee's kind of game and Milwaukee's tempo. And it was highlighted with that Giannis dunk, I think about 3 minutes in. The ball just popped out in transition. They got it to Giannis. He came down the middle. Griffin was like, should I step in front? Should I step in front? Half a second. And then Giannis is throwing it down massively with one hand. And you need a timeout because those just the momentum dominant kind of plays that Giannis, he takes a hold of the whole momentum of the game and it becomes all on their terms when he's able to get those kind of highlight plays. So I think that was a massive key for Giannis in the game overall. And yeah, you spoke about Middleton and how good he was in game 3, especially at the beginning. He catches it on the elbow, jabs the guy, takes one look at him, jump shot, all net. You're like, okay, he's on, he's ready to roll. And when he does get hot, Middleton, it's often 3, 4, 5 buckets in a row. Contested threes, pull-ups, like getting to the basket, little floater. He was really impressive. And I thought, even though he struggled in the first 2 games, that he was probably the only guy in Milwaukee who was putting his head down. He's saying, I'm not going out without swinging. I'm taking 20 shots tonight if I have to because I've got to get going. And this is like my job on the team to be the scorer. So, I thought that was really impressive and huge for his confidence that he was able to be so big in game 3. I think overall, as the game went longer in game 3, you touched on that Brucey Brown and his influence on the offensive end. To look up in the third quarter and he's got like 16 points. It's not something that you expect to happen. But you're right that Brook Lopez just wasn't showing him any respect. He was helping hard on Kyrie or KD in the pick and roll and allowing Brown to basically get that space. And that's got to be part of the game plan for Milwaukee because, they want to keep Lopez out there, obviously. It's been 3 games and they haven't really changed up their rotation at all. They haven't really put PJ Tucker at that 4 position. They're going to continue to keep him out on the wing. It'd be nice if Tucker could hit a shot for them as well from the outside. But, when Milwaukee took that 20-point lead, I thought that we were going to see what we see from Milwaukee in the regular season, which is they bring their bench unit on and they start to run a few more plays. They start to run some action, try to get some of these shooters like Forbes and Connaughton open, get Bobby Portis a few looks. I felt that they got way too stagnant. I felt like they continued to go with a lot of pick and roll, a lot of isolation at the top of the key, and still, it's still good offense because you're able to create a good shot almost every time. But I don't feel like other people actually got involved in the game. And that's why the longer the game got on and in the fourth quarter, it was just a dredging of Middleton and a dredging of Antetokounmpo backing down guys with everyone else just standing around watching. And a lot of times it ended up in Giannis just having to force up a 3 to try to get a lot of momentum for them. And, I've got to say that I'm not really happy with the amount of 3-pointers that Giannis is taking. Like, I'd rather get touches for any other guy on their team, whether it's their guys on their bench, rather than allow Giannis just to dribble it up and throw up a 3, because Brooklyn, they don't have to play defense at all in that possession. That's just KD and Kyrie getting an absolute rest. And you can guarantee that if they get down in transition the other way, they're going to whack a 3 at a much higher percentage than anything Giannis can throw up. So I think there are some problems with what Milwaukee was doing there. And it felt like they almost ran out of options, and Budenholzer just going, okay, we're just going to have to roll with Giannis and Middleton at the top of the key for the rest of this game and hope that we can get it done. I felt like he didn't really have faith in his bench rotation. But I think one thing that is shining well for Milwaukee is that Drew Holiday can play a lot better than that, and he should be more involved offensively in game 4. And not much more can be said for a guy who hits a clutch shot like he did, and how much confidence and momentum that gives him and his team. He scored the game-winning bucket in this game, and that was absolutely massive. What did you think about the closing possessions of the game from the Bucks? I thought Brooklyn choked. In terms of the last minute and a half, KD hit a couple of huge shots to give them the lead. It's like, all we got to do is hold on here because KD's gotten us to this point. He was really hot in the second half, KD, and they just weren't able to close it out.
Well, that's where it sort of comes back to the Bruce Brown thing. I think that's one of the worst Joe Harris games shooting the ball I've ever seen.
What about that wide open jumper?
Elbow, yeah.
When they doubled KD, minute and a half to go, wide open elbow jumper. Maybe it was just too close for him. He's used to be about 3 or 4 feet
maybe
behind.
Needed to take a dribble and step back. I don't know. It was that sort of a game though for him, because when he wasn't knocking down some really makeable shots early, it kind of felt potentially it was, and especially as you say, when he drove to the rim and his layup early in the game sort of rolled around and went out. It's not great for a shooter that like most guys, they love to see the ball go in and build off that. But yeah, Milwaukee, I thought they did okay. What I sort of think, and it goes back to your point when it comes to down the stretch, that's when the one-on-one and the ISO stuff is actually okay. I'm a fan of that. So more so the issue is when they're doing it throughout the game. And I would almost put Drew Holiday in the category of someone who you should look to run plays for. I know you mentioned the bench unit of the Bucks. Drew's the same. I know they don't do it a terrible amount, but I always feel like, he has an advantage over most opposition guards just due to his size and strength. So more than a couple of post-ups a game is ideal. And that probably should be done when Giannis isn't on the floor. So if you had, basically shooters, 4 other shooters surrounded by a Drew post-up, I'm sure you'd be able to get a really good shot out of a sequence like that. But I think most surprising is where, if you want to span back to game 1 and game 2 as well, is you're not getting much production out of the bench from Milwaukee at all. And I agree with you. That's due to the game plan. I think the Nets, you're actually getting stuff off the bench, right? Like I thought you had some good Claxton minutes in game 1 and 2. Thought he was pretty active. I thought it's clear Shamet's outplaying Forbes. And look, that's not hard to do at the moment, because I'm not sure if Forbes has even made a 3 yet in this series. He's maybe made 1, which is just polar opposite to how he was playing against Miami. So, and then Portis, some spot minutes, but you're not getting a terrible amount out of him. The only highlight of Portis I can think of is actually in game 1, right, where Blake Griffin basically full-on swan dived out to steal the ball from Portis. And that's the only highlight I can think of where Portis was involved. He hasn't been able to make too much of an impact, but more credit should probably go to the Nets. I know they've shot the shit out of the ball so far, but apart from game 3, but I think their defense has been pretty insane. Like I know a lot of people were potentially expecting, who cares about defense because they're all offense and they have the 3 best guys. But we did the pod after game 1 and we spoke about how Brooklyn were able to adjust to life without Harden much more than the Bucks were able to take advantage of it. And that seems to sort of continued. And it's kind of scary to think if Harris knocked down a couple threes the other day, or KD was hitting shots earlier and didn't have a slow start. If potentially it was Kyrie or KD taking the shot down the end and not Bruce Brown forcing a tough layup. It's scary because it could be 3-0 if not for a few of those things. So it certainly wasn't a perfect game by Milwaukee. They needed a lot of luck, but sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I think that was an example of that. But yeah, I think if you're going to have Middleton and Giannis account for, what was it, 80% of your points, if those two combined for, was it 60 plus out of the 86 that Milwaukee scored, I don't think that's going to hold up in game 4 tomorrow. I think KD and Kyrie are going to potentially be like, look, we've got a chance to head back to Brooklyn up 3-1 to close this out. And we'll speak about another team that's smelling blood at the moment with their series, and that's Phoenix. But I think Brooklyn can potentially smell blood and still feel really good about where they're at, because they could have easily won that game despite not shooting the ball well at all. And look, I don't want to be the guy that hammers the refs, but I thought there was some crazy stuff going on from just the whistle itself getting blown. I mean, I remember Drew Holiday fighting for a loose ball under his basket, and somehow that was a foul on KD.
That wasn't a foul.
That he fouled KD apparently, and that's just fighting for a loose ball. So, I mean, I that's one in particular that stands out, and I don't really get it. But I think the summation from me overall is I actually think Brooklyn could take care of business tomorrow and get this stuff wrapped up in 5, because I've hated what I've seen from not necessarily the Bucks' best players, but just their game plan overall. And if that's Budenholzer's fault, then maybe he's got to go in the off season. But it seems weird that the ball movement is with the Nets and the stagnant ISO one-on-one ball is with the Bucks. I could have sworn it would have been the other way around heading into this series, given the type of players that the Nets have and some of the best scorers in the world. So that's a really interesting subplot that I didn't think would happen that did. So I thought roles would be reversed. So I don't know why the Bucks have decided to stop moving the ball, but it's something that, gosh, I don't know why. If they do it tomorrow, that's even more confusing. Why have they not done it for the first 3 games and they decide to do it in game 4? So look, if they do, that's great. And then hopefully they can make it a series. For the sake of entertainment, I want it to be a series, but I think this could be Brooklyn in 5. There's potential that tomorrow's the last game in Milwaukee based on what I've seen.
Interesting. I think, Budenholzer, it seems like he's not necessarily keen to make adjustments. And when you look at Brooklyn, then when their starters were able to take care of business big time, especially at the beginning of game 2, Steve Nash was able to integrate and bring in his bench guys, and they were focal points. They were a big part of the offense, and they were generating baskets. They were doing a lot offensively. They were really involved in what was happening. And in this game 3, when the Milwaukee starting 5, particularly Giannis and Middleton, completely put the foot down, got them into a really strong lead, a really commanding lead, it didn't roll over into the bench all of a sudden having confidence coming in and shooting away with freedom. It felt like they were very tight and their offense wasn't flowing very well. You got to give some credit to Brooklyn's defense, but I just don't think that Milwaukee really shared it around enough. And I didn't think they made a concerted effort to get other guys involved besides their two studs. So, even a guy like Lopez played a lot of minutes, didn't really see any looks from 3 until he hit one clutch 3 in the 4th quarter. But, when they're up 20 points, I feel like you've got to move the ball and you've got to try to find some wide open shooters, because you should be drawing in the defense once you got that kind of lead with Giannis dominating the way he was early. So I think the mold that Brooklyn's doing it, the way that Brooklyn has won the 2 games so far, seems a lot cleaner and a lot more sustainable than what we saw from Milwaukee in game 3. But I think to push back a tiny bit, I think Brooklyn really missed a serious chance to win that game. As poorly as they shot, they were in the lead at a clutch moment. And we did see, this rang a little bit of a clutch situation earlier in the season, that game against Washington, where they completely fumbled the bag against Washington. They're up 5 with 12 seconds to go. Brad Beal hits a deep 3. Harris, big miscommunication with Durant. They steal the inbounds pass, get to Westbrook for a game-winning 3. That was a capitulation. That was a complete, we just lost the game on 2 plays. And I felt like that's almost, what happened in game 3. They really threw this one away. Not only were they in the lead late in the game, but we talked about that rough execution on the very last play, the last position. They didn't get the ball in the hands of Kyrie or KD in the final 15 seconds. That's just a breakdown, whether it's Brucey Brown's fault or just Blake Griffin for not
throwing
catching the inbound pass very well, or throwing the ball away. That's a combination of the team not executing at a crucial moment. But also, Drew Holiday, he went full court and got an uncontested layup for the win. And I give credit to Drew because it was a really nice move. But Brooklyn didn't show any urgency defensively there at all. That was a real breakdown and a real kind of, something that can hurt your momentum and start to put the questions in the back of your mind. Like, can we actually do this? Are we strong enough mentally to close out these tough situations where we have to? So I think with that in mind, I think Milwaukee does have a little bit of light, especially if they can come out and win game 4. Then they'll feel like they've stolen one in game 3. And if they're able to win with any kind of conviction in game 4, then we've got a serious series on our hand. But you're right that, Brooklyn can shoot a lot better than they did in game 3. So I'd be very keen and interested to see what happens at the beginning, the first 5 minutes of the game, which team comes out 100% ready to play and kind of takes over the control of game 4, because, it's getting more and more crucial. Brooklyn are only 2 games away from advancing. So we're about to see basically everything that these teams have got left in the tank.
Yeah, and look, I shouldn't slag off, and you shouldn't potentially slag off Lopez as well, because he did have 6 blocks in that game, just to check the stats. So he was big down the stretch with protecting the rim. He did have quite a few blocks. So me in particular, I shouldn't really hammer him. But as you say, there's a lot of looks that he had earlier in the first quarter and second quarter that were very makeable from deep to just build off the momentum that you say that Giannis and Middleton built. So potentially he can get it going next game. But
I don't want to see Giannis shoot 5 threes. I want to see Lopez at least shoot 5, because he's a shooter and he could really stretch out the D. Giannis just feels like if he makes one, it's like a bonus. But if he's shooting more than 3, it feels like wasted possessions.
Well, in game 3 in particular, he took 8. So he was 1 of 8 from deep. So that's probably way too much. Yeah.
What if he hits 4, and then they win the game because of Giannis's threes? Does that mean he's going to do that again in the next series? And then when they get to the finals, he's going to try to shoot his way to a championship? Like, at some stage, you've got to be who you are, and him shooting 8 threes is nowhere near, him being the best version of him. No way.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think the final thing to sort of sum it up with this series is the Nets probably, it's so far anyway, I think they've shown they've got the best 2 guys in the series. I don't think Giannis has played well enough to be better than Kyrie. I think it's KD and Kyrie that have been 1-2 so far out of everyone, and then it's Giannis and Middleton that potentially have come in at 3 and 4. But if that stays the same, then you'd really hope that it would be Giannis and Durant going head to head for who's the best guy in the series. But so far, KD's been well and truly the best guy. And that's what I kind of think. If he has another bad shooting game, I can't see it happening. If it does, I'll be really surprised. But the way he was just scoring the ball at will, I thought how he shot in the first half of game 3 was so unlike how he'd been playing in game 1 and 2. And as you say, the second half was ridiculous. He hit some of the toughest shots in that second half, some deep threes that were just like, whoa, that really brought him back. But
I enjoyed the physical defense of PJ Tucker. He always gets renowned for his effort defensively chasing guys, but it feels like he just gets scored on more than anyone else in the league. Like, the toughest, best shooters just work him every time. But, he gets up in KD's face and he's making it difficult. He's making KD work. He's really tiring him out a bit. So I think he's doing a good job there. Agreed. I think one more key thing that we haven't touched on that was super important was Blake Griffin and whether he can stay on the floor. If Giannis is able to draw a couple of fouls on him early, it looked very plausible in Brooklyn, when they brought on Mike James, when they brought on Claxton, obviously Shamet was good at both venues so far in this series, but you wonder if that can continue. But it looks like Mike James and Claxton, it looks like they're not really up to it when it comes to on the road in Milwaukee, lots of fans, lots of pressure. Can they really produce if Blake Griffin gets in serious foul trouble? That's an area where, Milwaukee can come and completely dominate. But it just really comes down to, whether the whistles are going to blow towards Giannis and his dominant takes to the basket, and whether Griffin can just continue to be as strong as he has defensively so far, because it's been pretty remarkable how good he's been. But, if they can get on top and get him in foul trouble, then they're going a long way to winning game 4 for sure.
Yeah. And did you see was it game 1 or game 2 where Giannis got the 10-second calls at the free throw line? Or was it the Miami series? One of them.
Game 3. He's got one in both series. He got one in game 3. He airballed a free throw and took too long at one time as well. So his free throw shooting is awful. It was
I think when a lot of people were calling it out and from the benches of the opposition and always putting it in the ears of the ref, and when it actually gets called, that seems to have really thrown him off because he doesn't seem to have a way around that. He's thinking about it every time. It looks like he's going to the line. He's just thinking about it.
They timed it on the broadcast and it was like 13 and a half seconds. And then I saw a bunch of memes on Twitter being like, all right, Usain Bolt's running 100 meters faster than Giannis can shoot a free throw. Like that should never be a thing.
Yeah. So the fact that's getting called, I think that's really affected his shooting. So I think it's going to be sub 50% for majority of the series and the rest of the playoffs if Milwaukee can make it through, because that's just gotten in his head, that's for sure. I know in off seasons when he's been trying to work on it, there's been pretty wacky and crazy things he's done. Like he's made the punishment has been like, if he can't hit a certain amount of free throws, his wife has to run suicides with him. So there was like certain things that were thrown in there that were, part of, different articles and write-ups on Giannis, and they're trying to get a bit of an inside perspective on the makeup of him and sort of how he's become to be the guy he is. And one of them was, that about how he's trying to overcome his free throw woes, and that it was, including wife and family as part of punishment. So obviously not wanting to make his wife run was enough incentive to try and be a better free throw shooter, which is interesting. That's for sure. I'll say that.
It's interesting how many NBA stars, really, really struggle at the free throw line. It's for a casual fan, it's almost unbelievable how much these guys get paid and how much they practice to be able to miss so many free throws or to shoot such a low percentage. It really just shows you how much it is between the ears when it comes to these critical moments and whether you can knock them down. It's a skill all of its own, and the best players really need to hone in on it.
Yeah, and there's also a part of it as well that if you sort of compare it, I know it's easy to say, I can make a free throw, why can't they make a free throw? But also just with the makeup, like their hands are huge. For a lot of these guys, it's not an accurate comparison to say it's like your average person shooting a free throw with a tennis ball, but it's not far off, if you know what I'm saying. How big some of these guys' hands are, how they can easily hold the ball with one hand and go up for a dunk. It's not fair to say it's like you or I shooting a tennis ball, but it's not far off. It's somewhere in between that. It's not. So some of that has to be taken into account, I guess, because a lot of them, it's like they can practice for hours and every off season and they never get good at it. And as much as that is mental, I think some of it is the fact that, they still play with this, size 7 ball, same as we do. It's just, they potentially, they've just got huge hands. So that's...
I think you're being a little bit nice there, Chris. These guys could be shooting better, but you're right that it is difficult for some people. Some people are just not that good as shooters in general. They're just not built that way. They're not that fluent in their motion. They're not natural basketballers. But I feel like personally that's definitely something that you can work on over time. And I would expect those guys to improve year on year. I think that's what will prove to me that these guys are truly working at it.
Yep. Okay, so the other Eastern Conference series, Atlanta, Philly. Got a fair bit to say on this, Das.
You're feeling confident right now, mate?
Which is no surprise.
I am. Confident with your boys?
I am. It was pretty dark at the game 2, about 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. Things were pretty dark for us Philly fans. So if we want to sort of jump into that game in particular, we had a double-digit lead. We obviously responded. It came out game 2, and we were, ready to fire after dropping game 1. And halfway through the third, we obviously still had a double-digit lead. And then Atlanta's shooters started to get going. Gallinari, Herter killed us in particular.
Remember the preseason pod when I told you he was going to be important for that?
I know
he's good, man. He's a good player.
He always seems to pop up at the most inconvenient times, and all I can think of is your voice saying that 5 months ago. So even longer. It's more like 7 months ago, 8 months ago. But so we basically gave up a double-digit lead there, and it was just dark. It was like, man, this is meant to be our bounce-back game. After dropping game 1, if we were to go down 2-0. Against freaking Atlanta, heading back to their court, that it was very close to panic stations. But you know what happened to us? Shake Milton happened. So Shake came in and he hit 2 big threes to end that third quarter. Hit one at the buzzer and basically gave us, a 6 or 7 point lead rather than just being up by a bucket. And he then sparked the whole team. That changed. The crowd was up. Everyone was going. Everyone was feeling pretty deflated before Shake came on, but he certainly swung the momentum. And I actually think he really changed the outlook of the series completely, because he ended up playing majority of the fourth quarter in game 2, and he had 14 points in 14 minutes. So that sort of spark is really what the team needed. really got the bench going. Dwight started to play good minutes, meant Embiid could rest a little bit longer in the fourth. There was a lot of beneficial things to come from Shake having that little explosion. And that obviously led into, game 3, where it just seemed like we were on a mission to
they were rolling,
to just not let Atlanta get going. And I think Embiid's been just a joke, how good he's been. I know it was sort of doom and gloom from me when we spoke about his injury, and it was a pretty dark time. I was pretty upset about it, but I'm shocked at how well he's looked, how well he's played. It does give me a bit of concern that what's the long-term impact and effect of this playing on something that's torn. I'm not really sure. Hopefully it's not something that can shorten his career, but it may well be. But I think outside of the performance you're getting from Embiid and that sort of stable source of points, and he was getting triple teamed in game 3, Das. I don't know if you watched a terrible amount, but there were stages where it was Collins coming across, Capella's already the primary defender, and then sometimes Solomon Hill came across. So it was just getting a bit insane that they were sending 3 guys at him. And that obviously, when that happens, it means you got to give up something. And game 3, it meant giving up Seth Curry threes, Korkmaz threes. Tobias got a pretty easy 20 points. Like, there was a lot to be impressed about in that game 3. Ben Simmons, second half, that's about as good as I've ever seen from him. Polar opposite in terms of how he was in the first half. He looked uninterested in attacking the basket. Wasn't
a lot of posting up, right?
Second half,
posting up from Simmons.
Absolutely.
Really nice.
So as soon as it was realized that Ben was feeling himself and got going, it was, as you say, a lot of post-ups, and we were really running plays out of that, whether it be Ben actually just attacking himself or finding others. So there was obviously the famous highlight that went around of the lobby through to Embiid, and Joe just throwing that down, which would have felt good for Joe, because that was it, really for the first half. It was pretty difficult for him to get baskets. I know he was making the right plays by getting double teamed and throwing it out immediately, but deep down, he obviously is a guy that wants to get going and make sure he's feeling good about his outside shooting and getting to the basket and putting their bigs in foul trouble. But yeah,
I think he's shot 15 free throws minimum in every game so far. So he's really asserting his will.
Game 3 was the worst he shot from the line as well. I think he was 12 of 16 or something from the line. But yeah, he's getting there, as you say, 15 times a game, which is huge, not only for him but the team. And the other thing I sort of mention is the Trae Young adjustment. So we obviously let him cook in the first game, and then it was pretty clear that was like, look, if we're not putting Ben or Matisse on him, then we're doing something wrong. So that adjustment was needed, and it was good that was made effectively at halftime of game 1. Moving forward, obviously Danny Green injury isn't ideal. If we make
calf strain, that could be, he could be in trouble for the next series potentially as well.
We've basically got to make the finals, otherwise he probably won't come back this season. Is what it comes down to. So
it's a big loss.
It is a big loss. I think
a lot of minutes for our Aussie boy Thibault.
Yeah, I think so. So, look, obviously, Danny Green, he obviously gives you, while he may be a streaky shooter, he at least can space the floor and I'd say knock down more than he misses. Well, potentially, depending on who you speak to. I know there are a lot of Lakers fans that are still pretty salty about that game. Was it game 5 in the bubble where he missed the thing for the win, or game 4?
I think that was the finals, right?
Yeah, wasn't that game 5 or game 4 where he missed that wide open 3 from top of the key?
Or was that conference finals against Denver? It was definitely a chance to close out.
No, that was against Miami. Yeah, it was one of them.
Yeah,
so
they ended up winning the next game.
Yeah, but still, a lot of people thought, oh, shit, that's going to come back to bite us. Just not good juju. So I know there's a lot of people that are very hot and cold on Danny Green, and I can be like that sometimes, but he does give you, a guy that's 6'6", 6'7", and can defend and just experience. Like, he's got championships now with, is it 3 different teams?
Toronto,
Spurs, Toronto, Lakers. Yeah, so he's a guy that's been around, and I mean his importance will still be felt in the locker room. He'll still be able to help, but we wish it would be on the floor. I'm hopeful that a combination of Matisse's defense and a guy like Korkmaz's shooting can combine to kind of make up for what we lost in Danny. But that'll be, we'll have to wait and see about that. And I think Curry's importance as well, just from now being that main guy in the starting lineup to continue shooting the ball. That's almost crucial for us, given there's no Danny now.
He's found a bit of rhythm. I think it was in game 2 that he hit his first 5 threes. He was 5 of 5 at one stage. He's such a flamethrower, Curry.
Or was it game one? Either way, yeah, I remember what you're saying. Yeah,
you know, when he's in the zone or when he's feeling like he's going to make them, they go all net when he's open. You know, when he's in that groove, he's just such a pure shooter. So just another shrewd pickup by you guys, you know, from the front office, because they've surrounded this team with some serious shooting. And on a game like game 3, when you said that they're putting so much heavy defensive pressure on Embiid, you know, the fact that they're able to bring these guys off the bench and they're able to light it up and basically push Atlanta away with the stretch out the lead with just some great 3-point shooting. You know, Korkmaz was excellent. A couple of really nice shots in game 3. He was awesome. You know, Thibault actually has shown some nice touch in the last couple of games as well, which is big for his personal development as well as for this team going forward through the playoffs. So they're in a really good spot right now. They got to feel good about that game 3 win, and they do know the formula. You know, they know what it's going to take to beat this Atlanta team. They've really figured it out offensively. It feels like they're going to be able to get whatever they want. It feels like they're going to be able to get over 100 points, you know, in the next game and probably in, you know, the rest of the games for the series. But it's just a matter of continuing to stay locked in on defense, you know, because Atlanta didn't shoot the ball very well in game 3. But I thought that Philly kind of gave them the shots that they're wanting to give them. You know, Trae Young wasn't able to completely dominate in the middle of the paint. You know, he wasn't able to get that many easy looks at the basket. They've really limited Capella on the alley-oops. You know, Embiid's done an exceptional job defensively. You know, he's not getting 14 to 20 points. He's getting 4 to 8 points, Capella, you know, and that's really important, you know, because if they're able to get a couple of easy ones, then all of a sudden the defense stretches out. I think Atlanta, for them, they really have to lean a bit more on you know, their second and third options. When you talk about a guy like John Collins, you know, who's been really strong, but can he give you a big, you know, 25 to 28 point performance? Can he really dominate offensively? And Bogdanovic, you know, he's been shooting the ball. He's still lights out, you know, every game. It feels like he's still able to knock down 4 threes. But, you know, can he do enough to basically single-handedly win them a game? Or do they need a monster from Trae Young to win another game and get back in this series? That's probably the big question mark for me, because, you know, we spoke about this. We touched on it at the beginning of the series, and at least what I thought was going to happen is that Philly will live and die by just how hot can the other guys get. You know, how hot can Herder and Gallinari and co get? Because through the course of a 7-game series, I feel like Philly are happy with waiting and see how that goes, because as soon as they go cold, I feel like Philly's going to take over.
Yeah. So, I mean, our bench pretty much took care of business in game 3 in particular. That was a massive help. So I think you're right.
George Hill was good. George Hill was good. I think
he? I thought he was really bad in game 3.
I thought he feels more comfortable, I think, with what they're doing. You know, he's a guy who knows the game plan, I feel. You know, even if he's not having that great offensive game, I feel like he's a guy that you can trust. So, yeah, it's just another guy that they picked up who I don't think Doc's afraid to put in the rotation.
Yeah. So the bench, what Atlanta had potentially been getting in game 1 and 2, they certainly didn't get in game 3, because they only had Gallinari there with 17. And then, you know, you get 8 from Lou Williams, 3 from Herder, 1 of 6 shooting. That was probably his worst game. You're not really going to get much out of Snell or, you know, Okongwu. So, and on top of that, the Solomon Hill minutes, you're not going to get much from. But, you know, if we have 14 from Korkmaz, 12 from Dwight, 7 from Thibault, 6 from Shake, it's like that adds up to be, you know, 40 points from your bench. And that's really the polar opposite to what we were getting in game 1 and 2. We were getting nothing from the bench. They were getting everything from the bench. And that really flipped in this game in particular. So I think that's another thing to look for moving forward. How much of a contribution can that Atlanta bench be, especially now that, you know, the news got revealed that Hunter was having surgery on his knee again, or he was at least going to be out. So that's another guy. Right? It's another guy they now don't have.
They wanted to operate on him when he got injured 3 months into the season. You know, he was having a great run at the beginning, and they knew that injury was serious, and they basically just tried to hold on and hope that he would be okay come playoffs. But it's obvious that they needed to do something with his knee, and I guess it's probably good that they've made a decision on that to make sure he doesn't do any further damage, and hopefully he'll be fit coming into next season, because he's going to be an important player for them going forward. But you're right, for this series, it just makes them even thinner. it's a really difficult loss for them, especially defensively, because he's about as rock solid as anyone, he has been this season for about 30 minutes. He's an elite guy.
Yeah. So I kind of think similar to Brooklyn winning in 5. I think Philly can get this done in 5. What's your thinking?
I think so. I think
any fight left in Atlanta?
I think there might be one more game left in them. Whether it's Trey, if Trey's able to get loose and really control the tempo for one game. But I think sooner rather than later, Philly are going to wrap this one up. I think no longer than 3 more games left in the series. No more than that.
Okay. So now the West, Clippers, Utah. That obviously was the only game that happened today. How do you assess that series in particular?
I think it was a pretty exceptional performance from the Clippers today. They really put the foot on the throat, especially in the second half. They've been a really good shooting team throughout the regular season, but there was a couple of games against the Mavericks where they shot the ball reasonably well. Game 7, they were elite from 3, but this has been their most complete playoff game throughout the first round and where they're up to now in the second round. I thought they really kind of got contributions from everyone. Their starting lineup was awesome. Batum played a game of his life. He hit 4 threes and scored 20 points or 18 points. They got a monster game from Paul George, super efficient. Kawhi was dominant, 35 points, 12 rebounds. He was a beast, basically. They had no answer for him in the paint. A couple plays early in the game, he asserted his dominance on the offensive glass. It was, it felt like it was a game that was controlled by the Clippers from the start. And it really helps when they've got guys like Batum and like Reggie Jackson knocking down shots. That was absolutely massive for them in this game. And they really were able to separate themselves from Utah. I think it was a little bit scary just how easy they were able to separate themselves in this one. It kind of, it was leaning on a blowout for basically the whole second half, and it was kind of Mitchell or bust for the rest of Utah. So I guess there's a little bit concerning from the Utah side of things, and definitely a positive sign for the Clippers. But I'm still holding tight that I think Utah will get it done in 6 games. I think when they go back, they'll have that advantage. I think so, but Clippers have really shown some life in this one, and it's starting to making me question it for sure.
Did you have Utah winning the series as your prediction? Or is this sort of okay?
Yeah. I'll double check
I think you had Clippers like me, but I could be wrong. Maybe I misheard you. So while you're looking that up, game 1 and 2, gosh, Utah shot the hell out of the ball. Like I thought, obviously Mitchell was berserk in game 1 and 2 and hitting some just absurdly tough shots. I know in game 2 in particular to end the half, see the step back he hit on Marcus Morris from the sort of left side there, just dribble into a step back. It's insane. Getting a lot of Dwayne Wade shots. So I wonder how many more shots we need to get of Dwayne Wade on the side before we actually, realize that he's now part of the ownership group. So I think ESPN's got to figure out we get it. He's bought into the ownership stakes with Utah. But I think other than Mitchell, it's obvious that Clarkson, has played pretty well. He didn't have a great game today, but and it's really important with no Conley that he needs to be, as dominant as he was in game 1 and 2. He can't have these letdown games, because if he does, then the offense obviously gets extremely stagnant. They really need him to be a plus and not a minus, because while he does. No, I don't even think he does give good defensive effort. I don't think he really does. Look,
he's not very interested.
No, in my opinion, he isn't. I was going to say he gives good effort, but he's just not a good player defensively. But I don't think he even does give great effort. So it's tough when Clarkson has a game like he does today to keep up with that Clippers offense that you're saying, who were finally able to get rolling. And, it didn't seem like any of their guys could miss a shot from deep other than Kawhi. I think Kawhi was 1 of 6 or 1 of 7 from deep, but everyone else in their starters, if it wasn't PG or Reggie or Batum or Morris, they were shooting the lights out from deep. So that obviously puts a lot of pressure on the Clippers. The Utah puts a lot of pressure on their defense. And I expect them to continue with this small ball against Gobert. They really doubled down, after the Dallas series. And it was really panic stations. It seemed like after game 2, a lot of people were sort of thinking Utah would go on to win the series and win it comfortably. And, the betting markets were reflecting that. I think they had Utah in 5 as the likeliest outcome. So I thought that was insane personally. And as far as I'm concerned with game 1 and 2, like Utah did what they were supposed to do. Number 1 seed, they held home court.
Game 1 was the Clippers game all the way until the last 5 minutes as well.
That leads into the next point. So Utah going up 2-0 is nothing like Brooklyn going up 2-0 because it was the way Brooklyn did it. They absolutely destroyed Milwaukee in both games and especially game 2, as we've just spoken about. But that wasn't the case if anyone's been watching, the Clippers-Utah series. The Clippers heading into today's game, they had lost by a combined 9 points. So, I think it was 6 points in game 2 and 3 points in game 1. So it was just a few possessions here or there. You'd probably feel pretty disappointed in game 1 in particular, where it ended with Marcus Morris having the ball in the corner, trying to get a shot off over Gobert. Like Kawhi had the ball and Ingles played pretty good defense on him and closed out to him twice. But even if you're getting closed out, it's got to be PG or Kawhi still probably taking that shot. Unless a role player is wide open. Only if a role player is wide open.
I think they had a timeout and they probably should have used it there when
they
have
a timeout?
Something going straight away. Yeah. So I think if Ty Lue had his time back, he would have drawn something up to make sure he could get the ball in his guys' best hands at the critical moment. But yeah, you're right. It can swing that much. And if you're on the Clippers side of things, you're thinking, we let one go in game 1 that we should have had. And we went too far away in game 2, and now we've really blown them out in game 3. So this game 4 now becomes massive for the momentum of the series for sure. And if they can shoot the ball anything like they did in game 3, then they're going to be really tough. I think from Utah's side of things, they tried to establish Bogdanovic early, but he really kind of fell off completely. I don't know. I'm not sure where his head was at in that game. I'm not sure whether he just wasn't feeling too good. He didn't look necessarily that fit either. I'm not sure, but he definitely didn't come to play to the best of his ability. And I suppose at times Gobert was really dominant in the paint, especially on the offensive glass in the first 2 games. It didn't really seem to come to fruition in this one. I don't know whether he had the heebie-jeebies catching the ball underneath the basket, got a couple of tough foul calls on illegal screens, and then it felt like his offense was out of the game from then on, and it kind of came back to just Clarkson or Mitchell doing their thing at the top of the key for basically the rest of the game. This is the main concern we had with Utah coming into this playoffs, and why we didn't necessarily pick them to come out of the West is because, they haven't really shown an ability to close out big series and big games unless it's Donovan Mitchell doing it all by himself offensively, and you're just not sure that can hold up with him just being, a small guard who doesn't necessarily dominate all facets of the game, especially on defense. Those question marks definitely still remain with Utah, and if there's another big win for the Clippers, then the pressure is right back on the Jazz again to close it out in a game that they should win. I think for them, they're definitely missing Conley, and it doesn't seem like he's going to play. He's got this hamstring problem, and if he doesn't play in game 4, and then they try to bring him in game 5, he wouldn't have played for almost 2 weeks, and it's hard to expect that you're going to get an all-star version of Conley in that one-game scenario. So I think, the longer the series goes, they do put themselves under pressure if they're not able to get this win in game 4 and take command. I think the Jazz really got to look to win this as soon as possible.
Yeah, well, to extend off that, the Clippers did a great job doubling Donovan a lot today and really making him a passer early in the game. Anyway, I think it took at least Donovan half a quarter or maybe even the full first quarter before he was able to get himself going with his own scoring and get his own looks. So if Conley's on the floor, and it'd certainly make Ty Lue questioning double teaming Donovan, because then you give Conley, if the ball gets swung to Conley off a Mitchell double team, then he's pretty good at operating, and he'll definitely make the right play if it's 4 on 3. So that's a big key for them for as well. And he's someone that developed a really nice connection with Rudy this season in particular. So that would Conley coming back would not only help that facet for the Jazz, but it would help Gobert himself. And just to piggy off the back of what you're saying with Gobert trying to punish that Clippers small ball, He's only had 5 offensive rebounds over the last 2 games. So you'd probably hope he had a little bit more. 5 does seem a bit. You'd want him to more have at least 5 a game, just to give Utah some second chance opportunities. And because, otherwise it's making it pretty difficult for him.
You got to give some credit to Kawhi and Paul George. They've really rebounded the ball really well. At the end of the Mavs series, they were awesome as well. Like they're getting close to double digits in every game, which is that's just a big effort thing, and that's pretty impressive for them defensively, really stepping up to that challenge. I think, it's really interesting whether the Clippers can almost take control of this series if they win this next game, if they do it convincingly. It's tough to think too far ahead. So I was just looking at who I picked. At the beginning of the playoffs, I picked the Clippers to win in 6. At the beginning of this series, when we had the pod, I thought Utah were going to win in 6. But a lot will hinge on this next game. It's definitely a must-watch. I think the key matchup will remain to be who can be the best player on the floor, whether Mitchell can do it again or will it be Kawhi. But I think you're going to need to see more help from Utah's other guys. They're always, they're always a massive threat to go off from 3. In this game today, they still hit 19 threes, Utah, and got beaten by 20. So, they can win a game at any time with their shooting, but it looks like the Clippers are finding a way to potentially nullify that as well.
Yeah. So we may as well address it. I know it doesn't make me happy, but it was something that was announced recently. So obviously Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year, the Big Man Award continues, the trend continues. I was really hoping Simmons would come out and literally hold Trae Young to like 10 points as some sort of revenge and flex, but Trae's still going to get his. But I get it. I do get it, but it's just something I don't necessarily agree with, but I understand because his impact is enormous. And you see when guys go up, there are a few possessions. It happened in game 2 as well, where some Pat Beverly minutes, and Beverly would literally like drive to the rim and Gobert would still be like 2 or 3 steps behind him. But you just knew there was no chance it was going in. It was no chance.
He wouldn't even jump to defend. He wouldn't even jump. He'd just look at him and then Beverly, oh shit.
Beverly just immediately blows it. And he did it again today. Beverly missed the easy layup. So, I mean, good on him. That's probably all I'll say with that. Ben, I still think Ben should have deserved it, but credit to you, Das. Another, or did you predict it? Well, you said it would, but I think the one that you even sent the message to me, the one you should be able to gloat about, because that obviously got announced as well, was Jokic being confirmed as MVP. And that's something you were on from the preseason. So look out for Darcy's MVP pick next year, because Darcy's now got a track record. So he's hit this year's MVP. 8 months ago, he called Jokic at $35. So when we do a pod leading up to next season, keep an eye on Darcy's MVP pick. That's for sure.
I think another white European might be in line next as well. You never know.
Well, maybe. Stay
tuned.
If he takes the off-season serious, and we'll see. Who knows? The Olympics could be the best thing for him as well. Could build up some momentum and get him a chance to, if he can lead his team to a really good run in the Olympics, you never know what that could do for his confidence heading into, next year's NBA season. So that's sort of where I think we'll leave things with Clippers Utah. I guess there's not really too much to talk about, other than I do really like how Ty Lue, just the first couple of games, it seems the trend has sort of continued now from the last series against Dallas. Whether it's game 1 or game 2, he throws out a lot of different guys just to see whether it's going to work or not. And while it may sacrifice, some poor play and some poor stretches, and you may lose the game or lose the first couple games. But then once he figures out his rotation, he has enough confidence in especially the main guys and the starters that he feels he can overcome, the 0-2 deficit, which there's potential that it'll happen now in both these series. But obviously we saw a lot of Cousins. We saw some Rondo in games 1 and 2, and that seems to be out the door for moving forward. They seem to have found their sort of 7-guy rotation. I think it really is, with some Zubac, but its majority is a little bit of Beverly. But I want to see more Man. I think there was a bit of Terrence Mann today, but moving forward, I think it's going to be a rotation of those three, but they'll more likely than not stick to Zubac and one of Beverly and Mann. That's how I can see it moving forward. I don't know if did Kennard even play today? Am I missing out on that? Let me have a look. Kennard played 17 minutes. Sorry, so I missed him as well. So it might be more like an 8 or 9 guy thing as opposed to 7. What I was just saying, but yeah.
As long as he doesn't get isolated on Donovan too much, I think he'll be fine, Kennard, because he looked confident and competent offensively, scoring the ball. I think good coaches, as you go through different series in the playoffs, different matchups, require different rotations. You've got to be able to maximize what you've got on your bench, and in the right matchups and in the right time, you got to be able to, trust different guys on your bench. So it's an important part about making it all the way through the playoffs. You've got to have guys come in and contribute, and some series and some games it's going to be one guy, and different series, different games, it might be another. So you've just got to be willing and able to make those adjustments. And if enough of them come off, you can look like a real genius. And, I think Tai Lue is done pretty well so far for how shaky they looked in that Mavs series. I feel like they're really coming into their own, and they look pretty confident right now.
Yeah. The other Western Conference series that has so far probably been the most boring just because of how dominant the one team's been, and that's Denver and Phoenix. So
really sad.
It is. I think the main thing that you come back to is and it goes without saying, and it's the obvious, but you really wish Jamal Murray was healthy so you could just see what this series could have been, because if anyone saw any of the regular season battles between these two, I think two of them went to overtime. One went to double OT. The other went to just OT. And the other game was potentially Phoenix won by 6 or 7. So they were all close. They were all good battles. So it is the great what if. I think if Murray was healthy, I think that would have helped the whole team, right? You suddenly don't have to rely as heavily on Aaron Gordon to try and be a scorer, and him to force a lot of shots that he's just not comfortable with. And it's sad because you're getting a phenomenal season out of Jokic, and there's I think it is. If it's not won tomorrow by Phoenix and it's a sweep, it looks to be a gentleman's sweep, and they'll win back in Phoenix in 5, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I agree. I think the momentum of the series, it feels like it's over for Denver. When you get 32 points, 20 rebounds, and 12 assists from Jokic, but he comes out in the post game and says, I've got to play better, and you lost that game by 20, there's almost nowhere for them to go here. They're outmatched, and it's particularly in the backcourt. We spoke about, how Jokic has a particular advantage over the front court of Phoenix, but Phoenix just have a massive advantage in the backcourt. Paul has been awesome in this series, and Booker really went off today as well, or yesterday. So, yeah, that backcourt matchup, they just haven't got, Denver haven't got anything out of Austin Rivers offensively in this series. Campazzo, he's just been completely outplayed by Chris Paul. And, fair enough, Chris Paul's, an all-time point guard, and Campazzo is, playing his first season in the league. So I don't think you can put too much on, we don't expect Denver guys in the second round at this level to be dominating. That's what we expect Jamal Murray to be doing. So it's just a mismatch right now with talent. And, it is really disappointing because this would have been such an amazing series. And you look at a guy like Michael Porter Jr., he could have been the X factor in this series, and he's clearly hurting. His back is definitely sore. You can tell he's not taking it to the basket with any kind of force. He doesn't want any part of any defense or rebounding. He's just jacking up shots. So I think for this Denver team, it looks like this series is a wrap, which is disappointing. An awesome, absolutely incredible season from Nikola Jokic is coming to an end, which is a bit sad, but I think their future is incredibly bright. You think about the age of some of their guys. Porter is such a young kid. Same with Jamal Murray. Jokic, obviously, I think he's 24 years old. Yeah, 25. So plenty of years in their prime together. If they keep this group together, which it looks like they will, then I think they're going to be a massive contender as early as next year or the year after. I feel like Aaron Gordon is a really good piece in their team. At times, he works so well off of Jokic, but let's not convince ourselves that Aaron Gordon's anything else but a really good role player and a potentially explosive athlete and defender. He's not a go-to scorer. He's not a guy you want taking 20 shots, and for him to be forcing that up, it just means that Denver are really out of options here. Playing a lot of Paul Millsap and such like that. not at the offensive level that Phoenix are in this series. And you know, you got to give it to Phoenix. They've been doing it all season, and they did it in the Lakers series. And right now, Paul and Booker are playing awesome, and the 3-point shooting of guys like Crowder and Mikal Bridges has been flat out awesome. And it's basically won them all 3 of these games, that outside shooting and that dominance in the backcourt.
Yeah, so look, this series has gone exactly as I thought. I know you said Phoenix in 5. I said Phoenix in 6. I probably gave a little bit too much credit and respect to Denver, but I guess it was just the Jokic factor that was playing such a big impact. But, you know, it comes back to sort of what we spoke about previewing this series. It's Phoenix is in Portland. Phoenix plays defense. So even if Phoenix's shot wasn't falling, you know, they'd still be, you know, in games and be able to keep things close. Whereas it was just the polar opposite for Portland, right? They needed to have perfect offensive possessions because every time they weren't getting buckets down one end, Jokic and for the most part, Porter Jr. had a really good series against them as well, was killing him down the other end. So I think that's a really valid point about Porter Jr. and it's worrying his back, right? So because that's the reason he dropped in the draft. It was due to having a apparently quote by, I think it was either an executive or a scout that said it's one of the worst medical reports they've ever seen was Porter Jr. So it's
back surgery at 17.
Yeah, or however young he was. Yeah, it's obviously not ideal. So moving forward, that's a pretty key thing as well, because you don't know the implications or if he's going to need some work done in the off season, and can that flow into next year? And you hope not, because if it's a 8 or 10 month thing for Jamal Murray, you wouldn't expect him to be back until like October,
late next season,
November. So or even into 2022. So it's obviously really unfortunate the timing, because you saw how good they looked when, you know, they acquired Aaron Gordon in those first few weeks. I think they went into the Clippers and beat them pretty convincingly, and you started to get this sort of projection and this look ahead, and you were like, man, this is scary. This is scary what they can. It was almost a perfect player for them. So it's disappointing, but I think at the end of the day, never say never with this Denver team. Like, I know we've counted them out and it's potentially a different situation how they were in the bubble being down 3-1, but I'm sure that a lot of those guys in the locker room are not going to throw in the towel tomorrow. I think it will still be a bit of a dogfight for Phoenix, and Denver will really give it their all to force a game 5.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, you know, Jokic ain't going out, you know, without giving a big haymaker to finish it. So I think Phoenix would have to shoot the ball extremely well to potentially close out that game 4. And whether or not they win that or not, I think they'll definitely close it out in 5. And then it's a super intriguing Western Conference Finals, you know, with Phoenix against the winner of the other series, you know, whether it's Utah, who have been the number 1 seed all season long, or Kawhi, PG, and the Clippers. That looks to be a tantalizing matchup either way.
If you were to project ahead, say, do you have a feeling either way? Because for me, I think if it's Utah that comes out of that, I like Phoenix. But if it's the Clippers that come out of that, I probably like the Clippers. That's maybe, just me.
I don't know. I'm not sure. You know, I felt bullish on Utah. I think if Mike Conley is playing, I feel like Utah could actually go all the way and win the Western Conference.
Interesting.
But, you know, if he's out game 4 and then he doesn't look so good in game 5, then I'm not sure if I can trust their depth. I think I'll have to hold on that pick till I get to it. But momentum would say that Phoenix look like the hottest team right now in the Western Conference, the way they were able to roll the Lakers and potentially sweep the Nuggets here. You know, it's really worked out well for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you kind of think that it's Brooklyn in the finals? Do you think if we were to jump the gun, is it similar to your West pick? You want to wait and see, or do you have because I know a lot of people are saying it's Brooklyn's to lose after game 2, the championship after game 2 against the Bucks. So are you one of those or no?
I had Brooklyn in the series going 7 games with the Bucks, so I think that it will be a real dogfight. And then I think Philly are in a really great position if Embiid is looking as good as he has. You know, because if we hadn't heard about this Embiid injury and you're just watching him play,
you wouldn't know.
He looks good. You know, he looks good. So I think Brooklyn are going to have a real trouble matching up with him. So I think I want to wait and see just how long that series goes and how quickly Philly can get rid of Atlanta, because I think they're a red hot chance. Philly, if Embiid's rolling and Simmons is playing as well as he did in that last game, yeah, Philly have got a legit shot as well, which is awesome for us Aussie basketball fans and for you in particular.
Yeah. Okay, well that probably takes care of things there with the playoff series that are still in play. There's 2 games to go on tomorrow, so it's game 4 of Bucks Nets, and that's an early tip for those in Australia. So this podcast will be out tonight, the audio version. Darcy and I are recording this, Sunday night, 6:30. But yeah, this tips off early start Monday morning. But for most people, that's obviously a public holiday, and you can get up early anyway and watch it. So that then leads into game 4 for Denver Phoenix. So you'd assume Denver to show some fight, as we just sort of mentioned, but more likely than not, it'll be on Phoenix if they don't shoot the ball well, as you just said, Darcy. It'll probably lead to potentially Denver being able to force a game 5, and then that's where we see it ending. But if they can shoot the lights out like they have so far in this series, then you can probably say things are wrapped up. But is there anything else you wanted to touch on? I think that the thing that I'd probably say is I'm very surprised the turnaround with Paul looking like, it's going to be another one of those years for him where he just has an injury at the worst possible time, and he seemed to overcome it, and he looks like great. What has he had, a double in game 1 and game 2 and 27 points in game 3? Like, he was his normal self. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I think I guess we were quick to write him off because his history of injuries and how it's affected him in playoff series recently. But, without knowing the complete extent of the injury, he took a bang to the shoulder. That's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like he's done any real structural damage. He got hit and he hit the ground and his shoulder hurt. It really doesn't feel like that bad. And at some stage, the toughest players and the fittest players are the ones who make it all the way to the finals and win. Think about a guy like Curry and how many knocks and bruises he goes through to get all the way to the championship, even when they're the favorites, how much he gets absolutely smashed. So I think Chris Paul, if he wants to go all the way, he's definitely going to have to play through injury. That's nothing new. And yeah, he looks great. And if they're able to get through this series in 4, that'll give him even more time to rest. True. And even less excuses if they don't get it done. So really hoping that the Chris Paul injury discussion isn't a thing in going forward in the rest of this playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Paul against the Clippers. That would be an interesting subplot in the Western Conference Finals. That's a juicy thing to think about.
Clippers just to make it. They've never been out of the second round ever. So for them to have to close out game and beat Utah would be absolutely huge for the franchise and for their chances of keeping Kawhi there long term as well.
Yeah, definitely. And for Phoenix, it'll be their first trip to the conference finals in 10 years. I think they last made it in 09-10 was the last year they made it to the conference finals. So long overdue. So yeah.
Imagine Phoenix versus Brooklyn in the finals. And we're talking about Steve Nash against the club that he loved and played for so long.
Even better point.
He comes back playing against Chris Paul in the finals. There's some interesting storylines to play out in the next few weeks.
Great call. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see obviously how the next few games and weeks go to be able to look forward to those potential juicy matchups. But that's I think where we'll leave things. Darcy and I will be back to do another pod to probably preview both conference finals. So both the West and the East. Once that's sort of settled in, we'd expect this time next week, conference finals should probably be decided unless one of the games goes to 7. Most likely that would be a Milwaukee, Brooklyn or a Utah Clippers, I'd imagine, out of the 4 series. So we'll be back to do a pod on that, previewing that series. But other than that, anything else to touch on, Darcy, or do we leave things there?
I think we leave it there. I think tomorrow, I think Milwaukee will hold on. I think they'll win game 4. Yeah, and I think that there'll be one win for Denver, one more win in the series. Okay. Well, I've got Brooklyn and I've got Phoenix, so the opposites. Boom. Okay. Well, that's it, guys. Appreciate you for tuning in, listening. We will be back, as I said, to do conference finals preview.
enjoy the next week of basketball. Enjoy the games tomorrow to enjoy the last day of the long weekend. But yeah, thanks very much again, guys. And we'll be back to speak to you very soon.
All right, guys. Peace out.
See ya.